Romero, I was just going to say thank you for inviting me to your project again.
No problem, that's fine.
So we was just at a solicitor's, actually just handing in all the paperwork for a property that we're purchasing together. So it is a HMO, it's a 4-bed HMO, and we do have some plans for the property in terms of changing it slightly. So yeah, Romero, thank you.
So from my point of view, I mean, obviously I was approached by LN Capital, which is obviously Luigi. We looked at it on paper and said, it does work. That's always the first question. Does it work? Will the deal make sense? Yes, it does. And also, what's the opportunity in terms of what extra value add can we create? And I think anyone that works closely with Brighter Investments know that we talk a lot about creating equity. We talk a lot about what scope does a property have, or what does that project have as a scope. And that's something that we look for as key. So this property, Luigi obviously approached us with, had the scope to go from a 4-bedroom residential property to a 6-bedroom residential property, which then you say, well, can we make it an HMO?
Yeah.
I'll let Luigi talk a bit more because he's obviously been on that.
So this property will be a 50-50 between LN Capital and Brighter Investments. Now it is in an Article 4 area and it does have a licence. So it does not require planning permission for up to 6 bedrooms. So our plan, purchase the property and apply for a 6-bedroom licence on the property. And what we'll actually do then, we'll convert the property from a 4-bed to a 6-bed. And that will add a lot of value to the property. Now that is our plan. Obviously we do know how things change in this property game. You know, things do go wrong occasionally, but if all goes well, then it should be, you know, a very profitable venture.
So, I mean, on that note, Luigi, I mean, I'm sure you'll be happy to share indicative numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, me myself, when I was approaching this deal from obviously yourself at LN Capital, it was always a case of, okay, well, what is that top level overview? Yeah. So from my opinion, this is how I talk quite often, is those 4 or 5 bullet points, what do they look like? So what is the purchase price? What is the refurbishment cost? Yeah. What is that end value? And what are we going to be left with? And what's the yield? So they are my 5 questions to you, if you can share.
Of course, 100%. I mean, I like to be very transparent, you know. So essentially, this property itself, we're purchasing it for £141,000.
Can you just put that in perspective from let's say a Midlands point of view, in terms of a HMO in the Midlands as well? What price is that? What would you usually pay?
So I would say this is below market value property. Because for a 4-bedroom HMO with a licence in an Article 4 area of Nottingham, you're looking around 180 to 220. That's if it's in the Article 4 area. Now, saying that, I would say we've actually got this property on a bit of a steal. So we've got it for a good price. 141. The seller wanted a quick sale, so you know that kind of worked in our favour. Was able to get it below market value, and essentially, when we've converted it to a 6-bed, I personally feel we can achieve between 280 to 350, and it does not need that much refurbishment cost. So purchase price is 141. Refurb, it only needs about £20,000 refurb, which is amazing. It just needs one of the bedrooms split in, extra bathroom putting in, and some other things as well, but that is to be worked out at a later stage, I would say. But yeah, it doesn't need too much refurb, so purchase price is 141, 20k refurb, and we hope to get it valued around the 300 plus mark.
Okay, and then in terms of, I guess, the yield, because obviously you have some investors that you probably work closely with that are quite adamant that they're interested in the yield and not about that initial day one profit. So what would be achieved from a yield perspective, I guess? Yeah,
so obviously for an investor purchasing a property with tenants, with a licence, with planning permission, it's all ready to go.
Okay.
So essentially, for an investor, it's very attractive. If it has a good yield. Now, I feel with this property, we should be looking around a 10-11% yield if it was to sell for around 300 plus. So we can, you know, it is a good yield for an investor. It's a ready-to-go investment, and we will be selling it.
And how much per person per week would you say?
So we're looking around 450 per room. Obviously, we will push for around 500. It just depends on, you know, what type of finish we go for. And I mean, obviously that is to be discussed. It's still early stages, you know, we're probably about a month into the buying process. But when we've obviously bought it, we can go from there. But getting the rooms filled, it's not going to be a problem at all.
So, I mean, from my understanding, I mean, you're talking about just short of £32,000 per annum. So that, to me, indicates quite a very good return on that amount of money. So any investor, I mean, will surely be quite happy about that kind of return, I guess.
Oh, of course.
Per annum. After costs, I mean, what would you say for typical cost per month for running the HMO like that? With your experience, what would you say?
It depends on the mortgage product you do have. Obviously, this is a buy-to-let investment that we're actually purchasing it on a buy-to-let mortgage. So there is a monthly payment for the mortgage. If you was buying it cash, obviously you would not have to pay that monthly cost. But if you are using a mortgage, you're looking around £300 to £400 for the mortgage payment. That's on an interest-only mortgage for a HMO. And in terms of running cost, bills around £300. So £300 for bills, £400 for your mortgage, that's £700. I'd say around £700.
So if I was to say, okay, well, from me, I'm an investor, so I'm going to take, I'm bringing in, let's say, it should be £32,000 per annum, but obviously you've got your, let's say, void period. So if I bring in, let's say, £30,000 per annum from this HMO, I've got costs of, let me say, £10,000. So you're kind of still saying to me as an investor what I should be walking away with in the region of £20,000 per annum as a profit figure.
I'd say that's definitely achievable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And as it is 6 bedrooms, obviously that boosts the income from only having 4 bedrooms to 6 bedrooms. So it's an extra 2 people paying an extra £450 a month. So that is where we're adding the value to the property. Now, in terms of turning it to a 4-bed to a 6-bed, it should be quite a straightforward process because they're way above the requirements. So the room size is around 20 square meters. The UK average is around 8 square meters that you need for a HMO. So we can literally split all the rooms if we wanted. We're not going to be greedy. We're just going to keep it as a 6-bed. If we did apply for planning permission, we could turn it to potentially an 8-bed. But I think that might be squeezing it, a bit too much. But we can go for a 6-bed. Yeah. And it's going to work.
And in terms of, I mean, I know you're saying you go from 4 to 6, so would you say part of that process, as part of that application, talking to the officer at the council, anything to do with, I guess, the likes or the fact that you worked with those guys before or they know you? I mean, what part to play would that say?
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't actually have any personal relationships with any of the council officers, but the new helpline they've got, the HMO helpline in Nottingham, they're very strict on getting your properties licensed. They've got the selective licensing scheme, and you've got the HMO licensing scheme and the additional licensing scheme. So they're very on the ball with that type of thing. So they've created a hotline, and they have someone that's always ready available on the phone. So it's quite easy to get through to them and just ask any questions you've got. I would say when you're speaking with the council on this HMO hotline, make sure you get things in writing from them, so you get an email to follow up the phone call, because that will be helpful. Just so you have everything in writing, for your records.
I mean, from my point of view, so I'm obviously investment-wise, obviously we look at residential quite heavily because we're focusing on, I guess, generating that quick return. HMO for me can also do the same, but it also is a bit of a long-haul game as well. Because it's going to give you some good numbers. It'll be interesting from my point of view, I mean, just to share with, I guess, my clientele as well, what your take is on the whole HMO versus SA. So house and multiple occupants versus service accommodation. What's your opinion? What do you like the most? Can you just share some light on that, I guess?
I mean, it just depends on your circumstances. I'd say for myself, I like the steady cash flow. So I like to have a certain amount of money coming in every month. Service accommodation can be great, can be very profitable, but you don't get that fixed, guaranteed rent coming into your pocket every month, which is a big plus side of HMOs. And even single lets, you know how much you're going to get. Obviously, someone moves out, you might have a void period, but in general, you know how much you're getting in. Service accommodation is up and down. So I mean, it just depends on your circumstance. If you don't mind, if you're a bit more risky, you don't mind, then service accommodation. But if you want that guaranteed money in your bank every month, I'd say HMO all the way. All the way. And with service accommodations as well, I personally feel you get more capital appreciation on houses than flats.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. People might think, oh, no. So if I was to buy a apartment just for a service accommodation, I don't think I'd get as much capital appreciation as if I was to buy a house. But you can use a house as a service accommodation as well, so that's just my views on it. But yeah, I'd say they're both great. I'd personally choose HMO.
So for me, I think they're both good avenues to go down. I think again for me, I would also go back to what is the initial pot available. So how much capital is available to try and do one of these two things. If there's a very large pot, then you would say, well, why not take the risk? If you don't mind risk, why not take the extra time and try and make something that is service accommodation? So look at that apartment block, for example, like we've done here. But as you can imagine, the capital required was a lot of capital as all cash. So a different ball game, I'd like to say. But yes, the returns can be far greater than with a HMO. But also, if you like the steady income, then why not then look at the HMO for either the same price with a bigger block or a lower price, but you're getting that income guaranteed every month to an extent. So I think for me, I would sway again more towards the HMO, but still don't see a problem in having maybe one or two of the service accommodations as well.
I was just going to say another point is as well about the the legislation and all the requirements, because HMOs, as we know, living in Nottingham, they're heavy on it. They've made laws surrounding it and regulations that you have to stick by. With service accommodation, there's not any strict legislation yet. Now, will that come into place? I don't know. Maybe it won't. If it does, a lot of people are going to be screwed. Depending on what the legislation is. So you do know with HMO, it can't get any worse. They can't make it any more strict than it is now. They could put Article 4 in more areas, I guess. Or they could change the requirements for like room sizes or the requirements you have to have for a HMO. But I can't see it becoming any more stricter than it is.
And I think, again, just going back to, I've got my investment head on at the moment. In terms of, I'm thinking, I'm a client looking to work with yourself at LN Capital or at Brighton Investments. I'm coming to you to say, well, where can I purchase my HMO? Because I get faced with this question quite often. Where can I buy my HMO? I want the best value for money to an extent. So with some individuals, maybe not too expensive at that 200 grand price point. I want something more affordable at 150, for example. What's your take on the big cities in terms of your Nottinghams, your Birminghams, your Derby, your Leicester in the Midlands, as opposed to, I guess, the smaller more towns, so maybe like your Lincoln or Newark or Mansfield with a HMO. Do you have any indication of if it's a HMO, it's a HMO, if it does good numbers, it does good numbers, or would you say, are you still looking for that university in one of the cities or some kind of attraction like a cathedral or something like that? What's your opinion from that point of view?
So I would say, as a rule of thumb, is to make sure if you're purchasing a HMO, best case scenario is the property is within 1 mile of the city centre.
Right, okay.
That's the best case scenario, and that is a pretty much rule of thumb.
Okay.
Because Article 4 came into Nottingham, you don't get that freedom of choice to pick any property. It's Article 4, you can't turn it to a HMO unless you apply for planning permission, and it's likely to get rejected. I have countless people I know that have been rejected when they've tried to turn a normal residential property to C4, which is the HMO. So they've had it rejected. They've lost £1,000. It's not a big loss, but they could have bought that property in hopes, thinking, I'm turning it to a HMO, and they've got it rejected. So I'd say depends where you are. If you're in Nottingham, you're limited, but you can make it work. There is areas that are not Article 4, for example, Beeston, West Bridgeford, Arnold, Colton, but they're not really that close to the city centre. All the best areas for HMOs, I personally feel, except from Beeston and West Bridgeford, are Article 4 areas.
Okay.
But if you look in Beeston and West Bridgeford, the house prices are high. So you will struggle. You can't just get a quick 100k house, turn it to a 4-bed HMO. You don't need planning permission. It don't work like that, because if you look at the house prices, if you can find a property in West Bridgeford or Beeston for under 100k, give me a shout. I'll buy it off you. Because
So
it's hard to find, basically.
And those areas, I mean, for investors or anyone that doesn't know watching this video, what are these areas? Are these council areas? Are they affluent areas? What are they?
Yeah, so Beeston and West Bridgeford are very nice areas.
Right, okay.
They are. But as I said, the house prices are very high.
Okay.
So I'm presuming that's why they've not put Article 4 in those areas. But I don't know. That is, that's up to them. So yeah.
So again, I mean, I'm always looking at what's a different avenue to achieve these kind of numbers.
Yeah.
Would you say if something could be found that needs a refurbishment or it doesn't need any work in a Newark, for example, in a Mansfield that is close to the city centre, it may be £150,000, for example, but it would generate 20 grand per annum.
Yeah.
Is that still a good opportunity to explore, would you then say?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I mean, I think if you're going to choose between a single let or a HMO, definitely push for a HMO. Okay. Because of the cash flow, it makes sense renting it room by room. That's essentially what you're doing. You're getting a property.
Yeah.
Instead of renting it to a single family, you're renting it room by room by room by room. It just makes sense.
Okay.
You're going to make more profit. But it's just acquiring the right type of property and doing it the right way. There's lots of people running dodgy operations, but I would not advise that. You can come into some serious legal problems if you do that way. So, yeah.